Will we see $30 silver by Christmas? I hope we can celebrate Christmas, have that Christmas present with each other. I think, in all due respect to what's going on in the markets right now, that we got a good darn chance of getting our $30 silver by Christmas. What's going on this week? Guys, it is like the Super Bowl of weeks for the precious metals. It's the big Fed announcement. That'll be on Wednesday, but it's not just here. There's other central banks around the world, and there's so much happening right now, moving parts that will impact the silver price and gold price. We're going to dig into all those. We're going to talk about oil going through the roof yet again. Are you ready? Are we ready for $5 gasoline prices? Thank you, Mike, for the super chat, my friend. Are we ready for, skyrocketing prices everywhere because oil impacts everything? We're going to dig into that. We're also going to talk about China a little bit more. We've got more information coming in about this massive repricing for silver and gold. When you compare the price of the metals in China to the United States, I've got a key insight that we need to consider as to what's going on over there and why it's such a big, big, big deal. But let's start by talking about the Fed. Our old friend Jerome Powell in the United States Federal Reserve. Yes, old Jerome. He's going to be back at it again this week, spinning their story. They're going to have their interest rate policy decision on Wednesday. Guys, we know from experience, right? Hold on, let me have a little sip of coffee. We may not agree with the Federal Reserve. We may not like the Federal Reserve, but the Federal Reserve holds more sway over the metals prices than almost anything. So on Wednesday, what the Fed says will affect the markets. But you know, and I know, all right, we know what's really important. Don't listen to what they say. Look at what they do. I will be shocked, absolutely shocked, if they raise rates on Wednesday. If they do, that will send reverberations throughout the economy and throughout the precious metals prices. But there's no way. I wrote this down for you guys last night because it was so critical for us to consider and to understand as we're looking at the price of silver, looking at the price of gold, looking at the price of platinum as well. We've got to consider. I said, hey, the Fed's going to raise rates. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah, here, this guy, our old friend Jerome. We're going to see his nice, cute little face on Wednesday. Do you think, let me get him down or get him out. Hold on a minute here. Huh? Do you think he's going to raise rates on Wednesday? I said, ha, ha, ha. They can't raise rates, okay? There's a couple, think about this. I looked before we came on. The 10-year bond yield's at 4.34%. That is sky high. You know what that's doing to the consumer. You know what that's doing to corporations that have to borrow tons of money. You know what that's doing to the United States government. You know it's putting everything, the real estate market, mortgage rates, it's putting everything on life support. Do you really think the Fed can raise rates right now? If they embark on another, because inflation's picking up, right? I looked at oil before I came on. Oil is right now at 95. I heard a quote of $95 a barrel. I looked at whatever Yahoo Finance says, they're saying 92, whatever. Oil is going sky high. Do you really think, though, that the Fed's going to be able to embark on another aggressive campaign to control this next wave of inflation that we're seeing? They can't control the price of oil. They can't control the price of food. They can't control unless they kill the economy. Now think about this for a second. If they kill the economy, that could result in deflation. All right, now, think about our government that has all this debt, all these expenses. That would be even less money coming into our government. How can they even think about paying those debts if the receipts coming in are going down, 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 and the value of the dollar, right, is going through the roof because of deflation? It doesn't make any sense. And this is the big kicker, okay? If they kill the economy, receipts go down, the value of the dollar goes up, interest rates go up. So at the same time, our government would have way less money coming in. But at the same time, because interest rates, if they go higher, they can't afford it right now. If they go even higher, it's going to be, it would destroy the government. It would destroy everything. So when we look at this week, the thing we got to be careful of is how tricky they are about all this. All these goofy smoke and mirrors tricks. They may find some way to raise rates, but through the back door, it's kind of like this. Here's the best analogy. The Fed at this point is like a firefighter trying to put out the inflation fire, but they're using gasoline to put it out. They've got themselves in such a pickle, such a predicament, that it just does not work. Thank you for the super chat. Apparently, I missed a super chat. Bear with me 1 second. Mike Herrera, thank you for the coffee fund. Yes, I appreciate it. So this week, no matter what happens, guys, we're gonna get a big reaction out of the market. We're gonna get it's a major week for central banks, not just in the United States, but I think there's 6 more around the world. The Fed get used to inflation. I think we need to get used to inflation. We don't like it. Thank you, Tony. We don't like it. I don't like it. You don't like it. But we need to get used to inflation. But as a result, we also need to get used to higher precious metals prices. I could absolutely see the price of silver getting up to $30 an ounce by the end of the year. Given what's going on, all the pieces, and guys, don't forget that already, on top of it all, there's icing on top of the cake, and that is, and I want to read you this, okay, because this was from Bloomberg. This will back up what I've said and what we've talked about a lot, right? We've not felt the full impact of all those interest rate hikes yet in the economy. It's still barreling down on the U.S. economy. Maybe we're halfway through it. Hold on here. Here, headline, the full impact of global rate rises yet to be felt in the markets. This is by Simon White. He's a Bloomberg macro strategist. He said the lag effect, that's so, we have to understand what that means. That means they raise rates, but it takes 6 months to 12 months for the impact to be felt. You know, it's like if you take a medicine that says this doesn't really start working until 60 or 90 days from now. That's how the interest rate hikes. So we are just now in the eye of the storm for the interest rate hikes. He says the lagged effect from the central bank rate rises has yet to fully feed through to markets and the economy, posing a headwind for risk assets in the medium term. So he's talking about stocks. He's talking about other risky assets. He's not talking about precious metals when he says that. Again, this is from Bloomberg with at least 6 developed market central banks due to announce rate-setting decisions this week, including the United States Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell, the Bank of England, and the Bank of Japan. It's a good time to look at where we are in the global rate hiking cycle. It's coming to an end. Now, think about this. Here's another little bit of insight for you. The United States always leads. We're always the one to raise rates first and the one to cut rates first. So we're seeing some raises. I think the ECB raised rates, the European Central Bank raised rates last week. I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the other banks continue to raise rates. But remember, the United States leads, and they always follow. It's going to be a crazy week. The big point here, guys, the big takeaway from all of this is the absolute fact that the United States Federal Reserve really doesn't want to fight inflation. They put on a show. It's all a show. Isn't Washington? Don't we know that already? It's always nothing but a big show. And the reality is they cannot survive without inflation. Inflation has to be there. The government cannot survive. And if the government doesn't survive, the Fed's not going to survive. So they're going to put up all kinds of interesting stories, come up with all kinds of interesting ways to describe it. But at the end of the day, they absolutely need their inflation. Be prepared, though. It's going to be a week full of fireworks. And don't you worry. Don't you worry. I'll be here with you through it all. Hello, Benjamin Caps. Hey, Big J's here. Annie Oakley. Who wants to say hi? I'd like to say hi to a couple of you guys. Ann Williams, Annie. Sayam Kumar Katori. The world should go for the platinum standard. I think there's a guy named Neil from Neil Han Dynasty who would agree with you on that. There's been this talk in the past of minting. Hello, Frank. Hello, Mark. A $1 trillion platinum coin in the United States. We'll see. You know, that always gets shot down. Hello, Frank from Texas. Hello, Brian. Good to see you guys. Absolutely good to see you guys. So the 10-year bond's at 4.34%, and they're talking about the prospect of the Fed raising rates. Sorry, guys, I have a tickle in my throat. Hold on. You might watch me disintegrate right here on this live stream today. It could be interesting. Talking about raising rates. Everything's on life support. The banking system, everything is either in the hospital or in the hospice ward or on life support. One of those three. The banking system, the consumer. I'll even go out on a limb and say the labor market is soon going to be facing those same challenges. And you're going to tell me that the Fed's going to raise rates? Destroy everything? I mean, if that's could that be their plan, right? A big giant reset. That could possibly, we can't rule anything out. Are they going to destroy the U.S. economy to fight inflation? I think it's very unlikely, but we can't rule anything out. That would be a depression. That would be a complete reset. Now, some people will tell you that, every 100 years we have a great depression. And that's right around where we are right now. So we can't rule anything. I mean, we cannot rule anything out. We've also got an interesting worldwide geopolitical situation, which is kind of very similar to the way things were 100 years ago when we had the other Great Depression. Could the world be forcing a Great Depression upon the United States? Could the BRICS and the 6 additional countries that are joining the BRICS be conspiring against the United States and the U.S. economy? We know they've talked about de-dollarizing. We know they've talked ad nauseum with themselves about their fact that they're fed up with the United States. I don't know. It'll be interesting. Hey, I'm going to ask you for one favor, one and only favor. All 300 of you, please. This only takes 2 seconds. Press that thumbs up button. That helps get the word out. We got 100 thumbs up right now. That means I've been doing that since day one. When we get to 100 thumbs up, we get 10 rings of the bell. But could we be in a situation where the world is going to force economic hardship, economic calamity upon the United States, where they've grown so fed up with the policies of the government? Now, look, you didn't do it. I didn't do it. You know, we all like to point towards Washington and talk about how we're not very fond of our leaders, right? You didn't. This is not your fault, not my fault. But since we live in this country and those are our quote unquote leaders, has the world grown so frustrated, so sick and tired of policies that they're going to force a reset upon the United States? I mean, we cannot rule that out. Now, How would silver and gold react during an environment like that? We know, there's like a fork in the road ahead of us. The one fork is continued inflation, continued devaluation of the paper currency of the US dollar. We know silver, gold, platinum price, value, the real thing we're concerned about. What's the value? What can you get for an ounce of silver? What can you get for an ounce of gold? Right? That in that scenario, as that plays out, and that's mathematically impossible that would not play out. Does that make sense? It's a mathematical certainty that it will play out. I kind of said double negative. I'm playing word games with you today. It's a certainty that if we continue down that path of printing money, of the government spending trillions more than they bring in, that the value of silver and gold and platinum and land and oil and anything real, anything tangible of value will continue to, at minimum, maintain its real value, and quite possibly, depending how it plays out, and demand surges or even a demand bubble for the metals. That's why when, like Rafi Farber talks about being able to buy a house potentially, he's not, I don't think he's saying, oh, it's going to happen 100%. Rafi's a smart guy. He's not going to go out on a limb and say that. But this idea that, oh, you might be able to buy a house for 100 ounces of silver, that's because in that situation, if people decide en masse to run away from the electronic currency, the paper currency, it creates a demand surge for real assets. The same thing could be true with land. Same thing could be true with oil. Same thing could be definitely true with gold, silver, and platinum as well. Right? That's option one. What's the other option? Have you considered the other option? What if everything just goes to crud and we have a depression and the value of the dollar? I don't know how you would measure it in that scenario, but let's just say it's a big, massive reset situation. Look, guys, under that scenario, the value of the metals would maintain at minimum as well. I was talking this morning to a guy named Adam Van. He runs the New Hampshire Alpine Gold Exchange and Goldback and all that, and we were talking about the value of the metals, and I think we agreed. I'm not putting words into his mouth, but the great part for you, all right? Do you own silver? Do you own gold? Do you own both? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear right now. And you don't have to say how much. I'm not asking. We don't divulge how much we have or anything like that. But either say S if you own silver, G if you own gold, P if you own platinum, or T if you own all three. I'll be curious to see who owns all three. SG, you know what? SG or P. So if you own silver and gold, say SG. If you own silver and platinum, ST. I'm sorry, SP. Why do you even come here? I can't even get my alphabet straight. If you own silver, S. Gold, G. Platinum, P. SG or P. Or SGP if you own all three. That kind of rhymes. We have SGP because we own all three. I won't sing anymore because it's a real bore. SG. Anthony's an SG man. Russ Ream's an SG man. I own capital S with a little bitty G. A little bitty G. Too many ding-dongs for Ron. Yeah, I went over my ding-dong limit this morning. That's why we own. So I'm talking with Adam. A great guy. I mean, smart guy, great guy. I've never been to New Hampshire. Have you ever been to New Hampshire? I've never been to New Hampshire. I'm going to get there one of these days. I'm getting older. Don't forget, I'm going to be here for you every day for the rest of your life. One video per day, minimum. A video or a live stream. You get to watch me degrade live on the internet over the years. You got a new friend. So please, subscribe to my channel. Please. We work hard. We appreciate you. And don't forget the thumbs up. All right, enough of that. We're talking, Adam and I. I came back to the point I was making before I got off track. Don't worry. I was talking to Adam, and we agreed. Like the beauty of owning some silver, the beauty of owning some gold, right? There's beauty in that. And the beauty is, if you own that metal, you can say, I'll say it, this is just my opinion, not financial advice, but you can rest assured that that metal at minimum is going to hold its value. But there's a big but. There's a chance, and I think a reasonable chance, and maybe a reasonably good chance, but a chance nonetheless, that it could go up significantly in real value. Meaning, that 100 ounces of silver, that what would that buy you right now? 2,000 US dollars worth of products could equivalent at some point maybe buy you $25,000. Or who knows? Like Rafi Farber says, maybe you could buy a house, possibly for 100 ounces of silver. That's the beauty of owning those metals, is that potential. But the downside risk is minimal. Now, I'm not saying put every penny you have into metals, right? I'm not giving any advice necessarily, but that's what we need to remember when we look at the metals. Now, if you want to get some metals for yourself, Pimbex makes this live stream possible. They're one of the channel sponsors. They're an online bullion dealer. They have silver. They have gold, they have platinum, they have great prices, they have great service. You can call them on the phone and talk to them. You can go to their website and buy online. Or if you have other questions, you can reach out. They have, I think it's support@pimbex.com, PIMBEX. I've bought silver from them in the past. I was very happy. That was before I agreed to take them on as a sponsor. So check them out. All right, let's move on to the next point. Bear with me. All right, this is interesting. I'm going to read this little takeout for you. The overall message among global central banks is that interest rate hikes are coming to an end. And that is bullish for gold. Who said that? Who do you think said that, huh? How about Edward Moya? He's a senior market analyst at Oanda. He also said, quote, Gold might not be ready to break out, but there are risks that central banks break something, which continues to support the precious metals. But it gets even better. Ultimately, central banks are running into problems. Wage inflation continues to increase. The inflation problem is not going away, and that underpins gold. That's the story. Look, you may not like it. You may not, our brains, and I don't even know that I can fully compute this right now, okay? But we are in a new day, a new era, a new paradigm for the precious metals, right? Over the last number of years, inflation was bad for gold and silver, which doesn't make any sense, right? Because we were always taught that gold and silver keep up with inflation, they protect you against inflation, blah, blah, blah. But because of the perversion of the United States Federal Reserve, of the monetary and financial system, when inflation would go up, that people were afraid the Fed was going to be aggressive, and they were. We had the most aggressive interest rate hike cycle in the history of the country over the last 18 months. But that's over. And do you know why that's over, guys? That's in real terms. Nominally, sure, they may find some way to raise rates, but in terms of real bite to the economy, it's over because the economy can't withstand rates going any higher. I'll repeat it, right? The banking system's on life support. The consumer's on life support. The government is on life support. And we got half the world who, unfortunately, hates the United States. That's not your fault. That's not my fault. We're not the ones at the big fat cats at the top. That's just the reality, and that's just what this guy was saying when he talked about that. Furthermore, let's just review something. One of the major rating agencies, Fitch. Now, this was 6 weeks ago, but nobody's talking about it anymore. But we're going to talk about it briefly. Fitch downgraded the United States. The S&P had already downgraded the United States. People around the world, and that's the last thing that they want to do, is recognize this downgrade of the United States. Now, silver, $30 per ounce, right? Guys, there is craziness going on right now in the silver market. That's my opinion. Jeff Christian at the CPM Group, he doesn't agree with me. That's fine. That's fine. He doesn't have to agree with me. But I believe that there is craziness going on in the silver market. And we're going to get to that next. But if you want gold, and if you want gold in the ground, check out our other sponsor, First Mining Gold. These sponsors, Pembex and First Mining Gold, make this show possible. We can't do it without some financial support. So please check out First Mining Gold. They're a Canadian gold development company. They already have massive amounts of gold in the ground in Canada. Their Spring Pole project, their Du Parquet project are both 5 million ounce deposits. They're in this exciting phase right now of development. Okay, they're not mining yet. They've drilled it. They're not thinking there's gold there. They know there's gold there. Now they're working on moving the projects forward, getting permits, working with the First Nations, okay? But if you want gold in the ground, go check them out, right? Mining stocks are exciting. They're also risky, so do your own due diligence. But I believe in First Mining Gold. It's a stock I've owned for years before they graciously agreed to sponsor Ron's Basement. So I own it. I eat my own cooking, okay? And they're a great company. Check them out. Thank you. Now, what's going on with silver in the world right now? Crazy, crazy. There's a lot to unpack here, and there's a lot of information floating around about what's going on with silver in the world. Let me take a little break. You have a sip of coffee too now, you know. We're hanging out. It's Monday morning. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. We're live right now. We're together. How cool is that? Thank you. I'm not going to ask you to give me a thumbs up. I'm not going to ask you to subscribe. No, I just want to say thank you because it is a big deal. We are the silver and gold enthusiast, and there's craziness going on right now in the world of silver, and everybody's talking about this. It's creating huge buzz. In particular, it's going on with gold, but in particular to silver in China. Remember, there's two acronyms. You need to write these down. SGE and SFE. The Shanghai Gold Exchange. That's like the equivalent in Asia of the COMEX in the LBMA. The SFE is the Shanghai Futures Exchange. Excuse me. There's huge price differentiation in these markets. Silver last week at one point was like 14% higher on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. All right, now, why is that a big deal? Well, that's a big deal because the COMEX said silver was worth $22.23. And the Shanghai Gold Exchange was saying it was worth like $25.50, somewhere in that range. That's a big, major difference. But that alone is shocking, right? These Eastern countries are developing their own markets. Second biggest economy in the world, okay? China. Let's not forget that. But they're developing their own markets for silver. But there's something even more important and more interesting. I don't claim to be a guru on the Shanghai Gold Exchange, but I know this to be a fact. The Shanghai Gold Exchange is based much more on physical metal. Sorry, I was out at softball games yesterday, and I think all the dust from the field got into my throat. Was based on physical metal. I will ring the cowbell for all you people. I will, I promise. I want to stay on track here. That's a big difference, okay? Because the COMEX and the LBMA, that's based on unicorn fart dust, right? We've covered that. For each 1 ounce of silver that they have that they can deliver on a contract, there might be 30 to 300 claims on each ounce of that silver. That's vastly different. Now, I don't have hard figures. If somebody knows the hard figures on the Shanghai Gold Exchange, send them to me. But But I've heard the smartest people I consider the smartest, all of them have said the big difference with the Shanghai Gold Exchange is it is based on real physical metal. But it's even more interesting when you consider the fact that a lot of that metal is being sucked in for industrial demand in China. Big news coming out. There's a guy on X named Oriental Ghost. If you're on X, which used to be known as Twitter, everybody says that still. It's hard to say X without saying Twitter. Anyway, follow a guy named Oriental_Ghost. He's following this closely. Again, guys, this market over there is based on real physical metal, which is different than the unicorn fart dust, COMEX, and LBMA, number one. Number two, even countries like Hong Kong, in the Hong Kong gold markets, there's reports they used to base all their prices off of the COMEX and the LBMA. Now they've switched to basing their prices off of, yeah, you guessed it, the Shanghai Gold Exchange. So there are major changes going on. And there's a fancy word that we're going to use for this, pricing mechanism for silver, for gold, because gold was 6% higher. When gold was like $1,920 an ounce last week in the United States, it was selling for over $2,000 per ounce in Shanghai. Major changes afoot. And the trend, on top of that, the trend, all right, when we look at the trend, is toward more of the metal being traded in the Eastern countries and more metal being sucked. And, you know, there's these people that dig into all these detailed reports, but there's metal being sucked out of the West, out of the United States, out of London into the Eastern countries. We know China's the number one producer of gold in the world. We also know they're the number one purchaser of gold on the open market. Are you kidding me? We know they're the second largest economy in the world. We know their people are crazy about gold and silver. It's getting very, very interesting. Now, what's also interesting, right? In the United States, right? In Europe, I guess as well. You guys have heard of Amazon.com, right? We all know Amazon.com. We order something and 2 days later, there's a brown box on our front porch, right? Okay. In China, they don't have Amazon.com, but they do have a company called JD, like Jack Daniels, JD.com. JD.com is the Amazon of China. Well, big deal, you might be asking, Ron. We don't really care about doing any online shopping in China. I don't blame you. I don't either. But listen to this. When it comes to silver, the biggest seller of silver on JD.com is reporting that they're out of stock. And it's some long Chinese name that I won't even try to pronounce. Zhongzhong, Xingzhong, Zhang, whatever. The important part is they're out of stock of silver. Okay? It's changing. The world silver market is changing. We talk about $30 silver. It's going to be crazy. I'm sorry. I have allergies or something, so bear with me. I told you get to watch me degrade over time, but you may get to watch me degrade today here on this live stream. It's going to be an interesting coming 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Buckle in. Oh, I forgot to ring the cowbell. The other tradition we've had, when we get to 200 thumbs up, I ring this cowbell, and some people absolutely hate it. Do you hate the cowbell or do you love the cowbell? You can put it in the comments. But nonetheless, I'm going to try to ring it softly, way back here. That's for 200 thumbs up. That's so awesome. This is so great that we get to get together. I'm the lucky one, okay? As this on so many levels, I can't reiterate it for us enough. On so many levels, as we move into this next 6 months to a year, right? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you think I'm crazy, okay? But I think we are going to see cataclysmic changes in the world economy and in the world price for things like silver and gold. Thank you, Amando Rodriguez, for the super chat. That is super appreciated. It goes a long way. Thank you. Thank you for all you guys. Never expected, always appreciated. Cataclysmic changes potential in the world economy, in the way that silver and gold are priced, what the value is of our silver and gold. I know people will throw spears at us and say, "Oh, you're a pumper. You're just a permabull. You're sponsored by the." Well, I guess I am sponsored by the silver and gold, but regardless, I used to say irregardless. Now I know it's regardless. I said this long before I was sponsored. I believe in the value. I believe that we are going to see crazy levels of change, not only in the metals prices, but in the world, and that we need to be buckled up. We need to be prepared. There's other ways we can prepare as well. Food, right? Do you feel comfortable with your food supply, your food source? That's an important thing to consider. Friends, family, relationship, all right? There's a lot of things. Medicine, all different types of things to consider as we move into what could be a very interesting time. Don't forget, on January 1st, you know what's happening on January 1st, 2024? Okay, you ever heard of a country called Saudi Arabia? Have you heard of a country called the United Arab Emirates? Have you heard of a country called Iran, Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia? And I'm telling you, I know we hear Ethiopia. Ethiopia is the sleeper country right now that is shooting up. Okay, those 6 countries are joining with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Do the math. Do you want me to do the math? Do you want to hear the math behind that? I mean, it is insane what those 11 countries will represent from a population, a world population perspective, what they represent when it comes to the world's natural resources, what they represent when it comes to the size of their militaries when you combine them together. They will be a force with which to be reckoned. And we know next year they're going to be meeting where? In Russia. Okay. And we know that there's been explicit talk of gold-backed currencies. Yeah. And we know that those countries are hoarding gold. We know that they're sucking gold and silver out of the West and into the East. You know, it's a scary time in a lot of ways. I mean, it can be a scary subject to think about in terms of what the West could be facing as we head into these coming months and years. I think it's smart to be prepared with some silver and gold. You know, we don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. You don't have a crystal ball, right? But nonetheless, we need to be prepared for what's to come. And, you know, when we're working together, when we're helping each other, that's what it's all about. All right. Hey, thank you guys for being here today. It's been another great live stream. This is not possible. Can we get to 400 people? Don't leave. Don't leave. Let's see if we can get to 400 people. I don't know why I like those big round numbers, but right, as we bounce through these coming months, quarters, and years, it's going to be crazy. Give it a thumbs up. That'll get some more people in here. We got 240 thumbs up. We're the basement dwellers. Have I told you that lately? We know the value of these metals. We know where things are happening. We know that there could be some challenging times ahead, right? It's going to be just absolutely crazy. That 10-year bond yield, that's what you want to keep your eye on. All right, guys. Hey, thank you again.